So, Jimmy Cook, nice to welcome you to our player podcast for Somerset County Cricket Club. And what a man we're talking to this morning. A man who in 3 seasons got 2,800s for Somerset, 7,600 runs, 71 matches, average of 72. How did you come to join us in the first place, Jim?
Jeez. Actually, first guy to contact me was Brian Rose. He spoke to me through, I think John Hardy recommended that he had a look at me. He was looking for a overseas player. I think John said, why don't you have a look at Jimmy? He opens batting at Transvaal. So Brian was my initial guy to contact me. And I was a little bit unsure at the time. I didn't know what this county cricket was all about, really, so to speak. So I said to him, I'll give him a call back. And I gave Clive Rice a ring. And I said to him, look, you know the county circuit, so tell me a bit more about Somerset. He said, I said, yeah. He said, why? I said, they've asked me to go as the overseas player. He said, don't even hesitate, phone them back now and tell them you're going. So that was basically it. I phoned Brian back 10 minutes later and said, yes, we're on.
And obviously you'd come from a fairly warm South Africa. Was it a bit of a sort of a culture shock to come over to a cold Somerset in April?
Yes, I think initially it was. I battled a little bit with the cold to start off with. But once the guys got me in the underpants and whatever you call them, the warmers and the hand warmers and all the rest of it, it got a bit better. And I remember Chris Tabray saying to me, don't forget to put on layers of jerseys and put on plenty of vests and things like that. Don't be afraid. You want to be warm rather than cold.
It didn't take you long to get settled in, though, Jim, because I noticed in here your first score was 85, then 79, 91, 156, 147, all in the space of just a few weeks. I mean, you quickly adapted to the conditions here, didn't you?
Yeah, I think where I was a little bit lucky, in one of my first innings, I know I played up at, we played our first game, I think, up at Hampshire, where I got a 40 and an 80, which got me a little bit into it nicely. And then we played on actually probably the worst wicket we ever played on in my whole time there at Taunton. We played against Glamorgan on not a very good wicket, so I batted extremely slowly. But I think the fact that I spent 4 hours at the crease gave me an opportunity to get used to those conditions and the slightly slower nature of the wicket and how it was going to behave, etc., etc. So I think the fact that I managed to get a couple of runs under my belt and bat for time more than anything else, I think was a big help to me in securing, a decent start of the season, that I managed to bat time and get used to the conditions. Because sometimes, you come over and you're not used to it, and you get out for 2 and you get out for 0 and you get out for 4, and before you know it, a couple of games have gone by and you haven't scored any runs. So I think I was quite fortunate in that I got 1 or 2 decent long innings under my belt quite early in my stay there.
And then that first season, I mean, you had a pretty successful season. You scored over 2,000 runs. I mean, that must have been more than you maybe had hoped for.
Yeah, Richard, it was funny. There was a bit of talk. 1 or 2 of the guys from here, the benchmark, I think, in those days was if you got 1,000 runs, you were doing okay in county cricket. And one of our guys got asked, what do you think Jimmy will do in his first season at Somerset? And he was the one who said, oh, no, he'll score 2,000 runs, never mind 1,000. So I thank the guy for putting me under a bit of pressure. And so I came across the first year with no real illusions of trying to do well, but this 2,000 figures was sort of resonating with me from what this guy had said. So I thought to myself, well, how am I going to break that down? And I thought to myself, if I play in all the games, all the county games, and even if there were 1 or 2 friendlies against Oxford and Cambridge before the season starts, I'll probably get in 24, 25 games, which means that if I can score somewhere around 80 to 100 runs in every match with 2 innings, so I've got to basically average 40, 50 per innings that I bat, that would be possible. So I tried to break it down into smaller little chunks and try to go at 100 runs per game. And I think in the end that probably served me well, because I knew that there were going to be times when you don't score runs, obviously. But I tried to put it into a chunk of trying to make 100 runs per match that I played in, to try and get somewhere close to the 2,000. Fortunately, I did.
Yeah, I'm very pleased too. We were. I mean, how did you find people received you? How did you like coming into Taunton compared to what home was like, and the Somerset crowd? How did they welcome you?
I think it was actually unbelievable for me to come there, and just because it was a slightly smaller town than being in Johannesburg, where no one really passes the time of day with you. Within a couple of weeks and a month or 2, everybody sort of knows who you are. you get greeted in the town. And I often say to people, if you could have 3 years back in your life, which 3 years would you take back? I'd take the 3 years I played for Somerset, definitely.
Yeah,
and the people were fantastic. People say, "I know you never get crowds," but we always seem to have 2,000-3,000 people, even at a county game on the first day. So there were always people there. And when people start to chat to you and they welcome you, and they were so good. I think luckily I had my 2 boys with me, and I think the crowd took to the kids as well. So it was a fantastic experience for all of us.
that's brilliant. I mean, and obviously then you went back to South Africa in the winter. What were you doing at that time as well?
Yeah, I came back to South Africa. I think I still played another year or 2 in South Africa, but obviously different conditions. I signed up the conditions in Taunton. I just found Taunton such a great batting wicket. The outfield was quick. In South Africa, playing for my home team, we tended to go for a lot of green tops, and we were only playing 3-day cricket. So there was an emphasis on moving the game forward as quickly as you can. So my returns were nowhere near for Transvaal what they were for Somerset, but then the conditions to batting were so much better. And I continued with my coaching. I used to coach the kids and things like that. So that has always been part of my life.
Yeah, and then if we can move on to your second season here, and you became one of only 6 men to score a triple century for Somerset, Jim. Tell us about that. That was over in Cardiff, wasn't it?
Yeah, Cardiff. It was quite strange. I hadn't been playing that well at the time, and then someone said to me, "No, don't worry, you're going to be fine." And from the previous year, I thought to myself, if you want to try and keep this 2,000 going, the first year I sort of got 100 and got out fairly soon after I got to 100. So I thought to myself, if I want to do better, and in fact, funny enough, I said to Jack Birkinshaw at the end of the first season, I don't think I did as well as I could have done. I don't think I converted the times when I got hundreds into big hundreds. So I was aware going into my second year that if I got an opportunity to push on, once I got to 100, I was aware that I needed to try and do that. And so, playing at Cardiff for me was a beautiful batting wicket. It was the season where they reduced the seam on the ball. So everything was like working in the batsman's favour, so to speak. And it was just a case of, I got in and things were going well. And I kept reminding myself, when the going's good, get stuck in and try and get a really big score. So I suppose that was in the back of my mind as I was going on through the day that, they're going to be plenty in North Corner. So when you've got an opportunity to strike big, go and strike big, not thinking I was, of course, going to get 300. But it turned out that way. So I was very fortunate.
8 hours is a long time to be out in the middle, Jim. It's a stamina thing, really, isn't it, for you? A mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, a mindset and a little bit of stamina. But I keep reminding people that I don't even have the highest score in my own family. My son got 390 for the Lions a couple of years later. So when people say, "Gee, that's a big score," I said, "It's not even the biggest score in my own family."
Oh gosh! So it didn't last long, did it? It didn't last long. No, and that season you scored 9 tons and ended up with an average of 76. I mean, you'd actually improved on the previous year quite dramatically.
Yeah, as I say, I didn't really think I did that well the first year. I mean, I know the runs probably are there, and people think you've been silly when you say that, but I actually didn't think I played at my best. And certainly over that first year, Jack Birkinshaw and Chris and a couple of the other guys helped me quite a lot through the first year on my playing of spin, my ability to play spin, which I would say was very average when I first came across to Somerset. But I soon realised it was going to be a major part of the game there. So Alan Knott actually came down at the start of my second year in Taunton and helped me with sweeping, which I really hadn't done a lot of throughout my career. And he taught me to sweep, and I was ever grateful to him for those couple of sessions he spent with me, teaching me how to light sweep, hard sweep, and all the rest of it, because it became quite a major part of my game against spin, and certainly helped me to get through those difficult periods when the ball was turning a lot. So I think I just started to play spin a lot better, and it helped me to increase my scoring rate, because I think my first year I hadn't scored that quickly. But certainly my rate of scoring went up the second year, and I think I made better contributions to the team.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously having Berkey here as he was a spinner himself, and I'm guessing Robbo was around on the scene at that stage. Robbo seems to have always been around, didn't he? Peter Robinson.
Yes, that was really helpful, having an off and left arm spinner. And I remember there used to be nets where the cars stop now. There was
Yeah.
an outdoor but enclosed net setup, and I know we used to go there, and then I could practice coming down the wicket and hitting over the top and sweep and all the rest of it. So that was a great help. But Berkey and Robert were great in helping me to just go down and practice the shots that Alan Knott had basically shown me.
Yeah, and obviously there was some concern whether you would come back for your third season, wasn't there? Am I right in thinking that you might not have come back, and then in the end you were able to come back?
Yeah, I think there was only a question mark as to what was happening with my teaching and my job in Johannesburg, where they were saying, you can't just keep letting you go over all the time. So it was just a matter of coming back and basically saying to them, look, I am going back for the third year. I'm so enjoying it over there. If I have to give up my teaching profession, so be it. But I really do want to go back. So it was not a major thing as to whether I was coming back or not. It was sort of sorted out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that third season you were here, you had 11 tons. I mean, that's a pretty hefty, run rate of getting tons per game, isn't it, really, if you think about it?
Yeah, I think it was just a matter of I got used to the situations, and batting at Taunton was probably different to batting to anywhere else. That was just such a good wicket. You actually look forward to going into bat. Sometimes it wanders when they were really green, and then it was a tough task. But even sometimes like playing against the West Indies or New Zealand or something like that, you actually look forward to going into bat because you knew as a batsman you had a chance. You had a reasonably good chance. I know things are different. They're trying to get wickets turned a bit more, and they're trying to make wickets that bring on results a little bit better, which I applaud the guys for doing that, because that's very important. Because you don't want to just make it too one-sided in that you can score a lot of runs. But we did get a lot of runs, but we battled to bowl teams out. So from a point of view of playing winning cricket for the county, it wasn't a great idea that we had such flat wickets. But if that's what was going to be put in front of us, try and score as many as you can.
And you had a pretty impressive lineup, didn't you? You had Roby, yourself, and Chris Tavares. I mean, all of you were pretty substantial batsmen, so you had a pretty good hardcore batters in the team.
Yeah, when I came over there, I thought to myself, Roby was a very reliable and very good opening batsman. Chris, obviously, class player. Richard Harden was coming on the scene and developing into a very nice player. And then we gained Andy Hayhurst from Lancashire, who hasn't been doing so well there, and he came to us and he jumped on board and suddenly started to play quite well. So we had a couple of good youngsters around as well. A couple who maybe didn't quite kick on like we would have liked them to, but generally we had a pretty good batting lineup. And of course, for the wickets, you were always going to be guaranteed of runs. Our biggest problem was bowling out the other teams. Even though we had some really good bowlers in our lineup, Neil Mallender, Jonesy, and David Gravely and all those guys. We had some good bowlers, but it was a difficult task to bowl people out at Taunton.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, then you went away from Taunton and went back to South Africa, but that wasn't the end of your involvement here, was it? Because you came back and was involved on the coaching front for us.
Yes, I think it was 2005. Brian spoke to me about coming back and lending a hand from a coaching point of view. And I came back and did a little bit of the consulting. I wasn't actually coach of the team, but I did consulting for the first and second team. But I really, during my coaching at that time, I coached a lot of kids. I was running my own cricket academy at the time and still do. And I was coaching a lot of young players. And I think it was after my first year of coaching, or it might have been my second one, Brian Rose was coming over to South Africa. I think he was coming out to actually sign Alphonso Thomas.
Right.
And he came across and met me at the Nets, and he watched me coach the young kids. And he said, Jimmy, this is what we need you to actually do in Taunton. We need you to take these youngsters. If you can bring the youngsters on and we can develop a little bit of an academy here, then we don't have to look at other counties for players. We can use our own guys. Would you be interested in that? I said, I'd love to do that. So I came back, and then in my couple of years towards the end, I got more involved with the junior guys.
Yeah.
I must say, I was at the time, I was shocked at what was going on in the junior section. So we tried to implement a few things that would help us to bring on a few players. And, I think a few out of that program that I started with did come through and have come through quite nicely. So it's pleasing to see that the guys there now are working really hard. And I know the guys work really well at improving those youngsters. There's now that academy, there's all the young players involved in under 11 and 12 and 13 cricket. So wonderful to see that the guys have continued with that, and that we continue to produce young guys like Will Smeed and that through our young program, Tom Banton and all those type of guys.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, you've also been involved in helping with the recruitment of one or two players, haven't you, who've come to make their name here, other South Africans?
Yeah, I think I recommended Richard Snell the year I left. And I know he didn't do that well over there in terms of his figures there, but great man to have in your team. He was really a good bowler who probably benefited more from the bowling on the pitch of Wanderers than he did bowling on the pitch of Taunton. But yeah, wherever you can help. I mean, if anyone asks me now, I brought a few youngsters over as well that came and played at a few of the different clubs there. I know Graham has subsequently come and played for Somerset. Graham Smith came and played for Somerset. Yeah. Devon Conway, who I brought over as a youngster to play club cricket, the second team cricket at Taunton, I know has been back as an overseas player to play there. So yeah, the line goes on, and anything I can do to help Somerset cricket, I'm always going to push in that direction.
Do you still follow Somerset? Do you have links here who you sort of regularly catch up with?
Yeah, no, look, I watch the scores all the time and I see how the guys are doing, and I love the brand of cricket that they're playing. It's always been an exciting brand of cricket that Somerset play. They get on with it and they play the game the way it should be played. From chatting to one or two guys, I know the work behind the scenes amongst the coaches and the work done by the fitness trainers, and that is continuing. So I'm chuffed and I'm over the moon with that, and hopefully one day I can come back there and come and have a beer with all the guys and come and reminisce with old friends.
Do you know what, Jim? It would be really lovely to see you back here. The place has changed in many ways, but not in other ways. It's still the same warm, friendly, homely club that it always was that you came to back in the late 80s. So it's great to catch up with you today. Thank you, Jim. I'm sorry we had a bit of a problem getting to you in the first place, but now we've spoken. It's really good to make contact with you. And thank you for your time today.
Great pleasure, Richard. And best wishes to everyone there at Somerset.